Beef shish kebabs are the ultimate summer grilling recipe, and while this recipe is really easy, it's all about nailing the marinade and then cooking them to juicy, succulent perfection, which of course I will show you on today's video. And it all starts with tender sirloin steak that soaks in a simple yet flavorful marinade. That's then threaded onto skewers with bell pepper, onion, and mushrooms, and then tossed on a hot grill until it's perfectly browned and gets those telltale grill lines. Now, I'm a big fan of outdoor grilling in this summer, but if you don't have an outdoor grill, you can also make this recipe on an indoor grill pan, so not to worry. All right, let's get started. First, we'll make the marinade, and while there's so many great options for beef marinades out there, I think mine is pretty darn spectacular. And it starts with a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. I'm using tamari soy sauce because I'm gluten-free, but even if you're not gluten-free, I honestly think tamari just has so much more flavor than regular soy sauce. To that, you'll add a 1/4 cup of balsamic vinegar, which adds tangy sweetness to the meat, a 1/4 cup of olive oil, and 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. Again, if you're gluten-free, make sure to read labels, as many brands of Worcestershire sauce are not gluten-free. Then mince 2 cloves of garlic into your marinade bowl and add 1 teaspoon of kosher salt and half a teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper. Whisk that all together and then set it aside. As I mentioned in the intro, I'm using top sirloin steak for this recipe. I like top sirloin as it's budget friendly, cooks well over a fire, and is great at absorbing the marinade. You could also use a pricier cut of meat like a ribeye if you want to splurge a little, but I think top sirloin is perfect for shish kebabs. Now, a little fat is always good on meat when it's marbled in because it adds to the flavor and tenderness. But if you have a fat cap on one side of your sirloin steak, as I do today, you can just slice that off. And once that's done, slice your steak into cubes. I like to keep them fairly bite-sized, so about 1.5 inches or so, because they will shrink a little. If you go too big, then they'll be harder to pluck off the skewers and pop into your mouth after cooking. And I don't think you really want to have to serve these shish kebabs with a knife afterwards, so it's best to keep the cubes bite-sized. Add the cube steak to a medium mixing bowl or plastic bag, and then pour your marinade on top. I like to smush all the pieces down to make sure they're fully coated, and then cover the bowl and marinate them for at least an hour in the fridge, though you could marinate up to 24 hours as well. And while the steak is marinating, we can prep the veggies for the skewers. You'll need 3 bell peppers, and you can choose any color combo. I'm going with green, orange, and yellow, but if you want to swap in red, go for it. Slice the top and bottom off the bell pepper, remove the seeds, and then cut them into 1.5 inch or so chunks. You don't have to be perfect here, just eyeball the pieces so that they're about the same size as the meat. And don't forget to slice up the top and bottom pieces of the bell pepper as well. Next, slice up 1 red onion into large chunks. You could use a regular yellow onion or white onion as well, but I like how the red onion adds a little more color and vibrancy to the skewers. It's always nice to have that pop of purple, even though it's called a red onion, in between the meat and veggies. And lastly, slice in half 8 ounces of baby bell mushrooms. The mushrooms themselves add a nice meaty texture to the skewers, and I love how moist and tender they get after grilling. It's also a bonus that they soak up some of that marinade flavor if you happen to place them next to the steak on the skewers. All right, so let's talk skewers. I have strong opinions on the skewers you should use when grilling, and I personally prefer metal flat-sided skewers. The flat side prevents the meat and veggies from rotating around the skewer when you go to flip them, and they're washable and reusable. And unlike wood skewers, you don't have to soak them in water for at least 30 minutes before using, which is one less thing to remember to do when you're juggling multiple things in the kitchen. But honestly, it's just frustrating when you go to flip the skewers on a hot grill and some pieces of veggies or meat rotate and twirl around a round skewer, because then it's hard to make sure you get an even char on all sides. So if you don't yet have flat metal skewers, make sure to grab some, and I've linked the ones I'm using in the description box below. My steak is now done marinating, and I should also mention that I do give it a stir a few times while it's marinating, again, just to make sure each piece gets coated in lots of flavor. Or if you're using a plastic bag, you can just flip it and squish it a few times. And now comes the fun part, which is threading the skewers. There's really no right or wrong way to thread the skewers, just alternate up the veggies and meat. I'll usually add a couple pieces of bell pepper or onion, a chunk of meat, a piece of mushroom, and then repeat this process with more of everything. I also aim for about 4 pieces of meat on each skewer and do try to switch up the order of everything so that when I serve them up on a plate, they're just more visually interesting. Heat either an outdoor grill or indoor grill pan to medium-high heat and then lay the shish kebab skewers on the grill. And you should get 8 to 10 skewers with this recipe, assuming you're using 12-inch long skewers. Cook the skewers for 4 to 5 minutes per side, or about 15 minutes total, until they're nicely browned and have some good char lines. Also, keep in mind that the metal skewers will be very hot when you go to flip them, so do make sure to use tongs. Unfortunately, my tongs were inconveniently in the dishwasher, so I'm making do with an oven mitt and my mandolin glove, because you gotta do what you gotta do. The smell of the shish kebabs is like summertime on a plate, and I am obsessed with the flavor of the roasted and charred veggies and top sirloin steak. The marinade really makes this very simple recipe so darn delicious, and believe me when I say your family and friends will be coming back for seconds and thirds on these skewers. I also want to point out that I have an awesome recipe for Greek chicken kebabs on my website, so if you want to serve up 2 different flavors and proteins at your next summertime meal, you should definitely check out that recipe as well. And for the perfect summertime salad to serve with these shish kebabs, you can't go wrong with my broccoli salad, which I'll link to on the end screen at the end of this video, because I have a separate video you can watch for that. I hope you guys enjoyed today's shish kebab recipe, and if you did, it would mean so much to me if you gave this video a thumbs up and shared it with your family and friends, and I will see you again in next week's video.